Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at Loveworld USA News. I'm Joel Richard, and first, let's have a quick look at the top stories this evening. Vice President J.D. Vance defends prayer, challenges Psaki after Minneapolis church shooting. Declassified records detail Obama-era briefings on early Trump-Russia probe. Ex-president denies leading role. And President Trump proposes pre-midterm GOP convention as RNC weighs options for 2026. And alligator Alcatraz starts emptying after court order. White House vows to fight ruling. And European leaders outraged as Russian strikes killed 21 in Kiev, damaging EU mission. And now to the news. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance publicly defended prayer today and questioned why former White House press secretary and MSNBC host Jen Psaki would disparage it following the Annunciation Catholic School tragedy in Minneapolis. We pray because our hearts are broken. Why do you feel the need to attack other people for praying when kids were just killed praying? The vice president wrote on X, a day after 2 children were killed and 17 others were injured when a gunman fired through church windows during morning mass. Psaki had posted that prayer is not enough, arguing that thoughts and prayers don't stop school shootings or ease parents' fears. In a follow-up, she criticized the administration's D.C. crime crackdown, saying leaders should rethink their approach. J.D. Vance responded that dismissing prayer in moments of grief is bizarre, emphasizing that believers pray because God listens and can also inspire us to further action. Now, faith leaders in Minneapolis and nationwide echoed that message, noting that Christian prayer and practical service go hand in hand, comforting the grieving, supporting victims, and seeking wise policy. Local churches have organized vigils, counseling, and aid for families, while urging unity and care for survivors, first responders, and medical teams. Now, authorities have identified the shooter and say there is no ongoing threat as the investigation continues. Christian broadcasters and ministries are inviting viewers to pray for the families who lost children, for the injured to recover, and for peace to guard the hearts of students and parents, while encouraging constructive engagement around school safety and community protection. Watch this.
Far-left politicians say, how dare you offer thoughts and prayers? You need action. I don't care about your prayers. I care about what you're going to do to prevent this from happening. Why does it have to be one or the other? Why can't you pray for the speedy recovery of these kids who literally just got shot yesterday, while at the same time committing to making sure this doesn't happen again or that it happens as infrequently as possible? I don't think there's anything inconsistent about saying a prayer to God for these innocent, beautiful kids, while also thinking constructively about how we're going to prevent this from happening the next time. You can do both of those things. You can hold a thought, both of those thoughts in your head at the same time. And Will, if you are a politician or you're a media commentator and 2 beautiful babies just got murdered while praying, and your politics force you to condemn prayer in response to it, you ought to get new politics because something very wrong has gone on inside your soul.
Yes, very stirring news indeed. In other news on the executive, newly declassified documents indicate former President Barack Obama participated in high-level meetings that preceded and shaped the FBI's 2016 Trump-Russia investigation, known as Crossfire Hurricane. Now, records released by Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and CIA Director John Radcliffe include then CIA Director John Brennan's August 3, 2016 notes summarizing intelligence that Hillary Clinton had allegedly approved a plan to tie Donald Trump to Russian interference. Obama has rejected claims he orchestrated the probe, calling them outrageous, and pointing to long-standing findings that Russia sought to influence the 2016 election. Now, the timeline outlined in the materials shows the FBI opened Crossfire Hurricane on July 31, 2016, followed days later by Brennan's Oval Office briefing to Obama and senior officials. A CIA counterintelligence operational lead memo referencing Crossfire Hurricane was then sent to the FBI. Separately, newly declassified annex materials cite purported emails from figures linked to George Soros' Open Society Foundations discussing pushing the Trump-Russia narrative. Now, it is unclear whether those communications were part of the August 3rd briefing. After the election, Obama met President-elect Donald Trump on November 10, 2016, and warned against appointing Michael Flynn as National Security Advisor. The classified records also detail a December 9th Situation Room meeting where principals agreed to pursue sanctions and produce a new intelligence community assessment on Russian activities. A December 8th presidential daily brief stated cyber actors did not alter U.S. vote outcomes, but assessed Russia likely aimed to undermine confidence. The FBI raised concerns about the draft before the broader assessment was finalized and released January 6, 2017. On January 5, 2017, Obama met with senior national security officials as then FBI Director James Comey described proceeding by the book and raised sharing sensitivity concerns about Flynn's contacts with the Russian ambassador, according to an email later written by National Security Advisor Susan Rice. Now, the disclosures revived partisan disputes over the origins of the Russia probe and the extent of White House awareness, even as former President Obama allies say the documents do not undercut conclusions about Russian interference, and Trump allies argue they show political abuse of intelligence. Let's take a look.
Any of this new information implicates former President Obama in criminal behavior?
We have referred and will continue to refer all of these documents to the Department of Justice and the FBI to investigate the criminal implications of this.
For even former President Obama?
Correct. The evidence that we have found and that we have released directly point to President Obama leading the manufacturing of this intelligence assessment. There are multiple pieces of evidence and intelligence that confirm that fact.
In other news, President Donald Trump announced today he is considering recommending a Republican National Convention ahead of the 2026 midterm elections, touting party fundraising and momentum. Now, the president offered no details on timing or location, calling the idea never done before and framing it as a way to showcase GOP gains and win big in the midterms. RNC Chair Kirsten Pels welcomed the concept as a bold, innovative way to energize the party, while noting the committee is exploring options to highlight candidates up and down the ballot. Now, on the other part of the aisle, Democrats signaled they are evaluating a large-scale gathering of their own before the midterms, saying several formats are on the table to marshal grassroots enthusiasm. A pre-midterm convention would be unusual in modern U.S. politics, where national conventions typically serve as presidential nominating events. Strategists say such a production could double as a mass organizing and fundraising showcase, arriving amid fierce redistricting fights in states like Texas and California, and as crime and public safety emerge as central themes of the cycle. No date, venue, or program has been set. Any move to stage a convention would require RNC planning on rules, financing, and media logistics, and also coordination with congressional campaign committees. Party officials said further announcements will come after internal consultations. Now, in other news on the Trump administration, the detainee population at Everglades detention complex known as Alligator Alcatraz has fallen by about half, following a federal judge's order to wind down operations and relocate everyone within 60 days, Border Czar Tom Homan said today. Internal Florida emails cited by U.S. media indicate the site could be empty within days. The facility was built to hold up to 3,000 people and opened in July as part of the administration's mass deportation push. Border Czar Tom Homan said he disagrees with the ruling and defended the center's conditions and medical capabilities, calling it a clean, well-maintained transitional facility. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the administration will comply with the court, but will not back down, describing the decision as the work of an activist judge and calling relocations an unnecessary burden on Homeland Security personnel. Now, while the injunction halts expansion at the Everglades site amid lawsuits over living conditions and environmental harm, DHS is pressing ahead with other temporary builds, including a second Florida site dubbed Deportation Depot and an Indiana facility called the Speedway Slammer. Homan said ICE ultimately needs brick-and-mortar capacity. Trump's July 4th budget law sets aside $45 billion for detention expansion. Funding analysts say could support roughly 116,000 new beds and allocates another $170 billion for immigration enforcement and border security, including $75 billion for ICE interior operations. Watch this.
I think the judge made a bad decision. I was there. And it's a transitional facility. It's not a long-term facility. It's a transitional facility. I thank the governors who are stepping up and saying, let us help you, because they felt the wrath of the last 4 years of open borders. 4 years, 10.5 million people come in this country. Most of them released in the nation, right? And again, I'll say it again, not every illegal alien is a public safety threat, but many are. But we have the most secure border in the history of the nation today because of President Trump and the men and women of the Border Patrol and the men and women of ICE. This country is safer. And with illegal immigration down 94 to 96%, you all know this, there's been studies done to say 31% of women that make that journey get sexually assaulted by the cartels. Under Joe Biden, we had a record number of aliens die making that journey, over 4,000. That's a historic number of people dying making that journey. Historic number of people, 250,000, died from fentanyl poisoning because of that open border and fentanyl flowing across. Sex trafficking, women and children were at historic highs. Number of known suspected terrorists, over 400 just on the southern border, an historic high. So when President Trump has illegal immigration down 94 to 96%, how many women aren't being raped making that journey? How many children aren't dying making that journey? How many aliens aren't dying making that journey? How many Americans aren't dying right now from fentanyl overdoses because that border is secure? How many women and children aren't being sex trafficked in this country because of what President Trump did?
The news will be back after this break.
Pastor Chris in 1 Billion Homes Project is all about making sure the voice of our man of God, Pastor Chris Oyakhilome, arrives exactly when someone needs it the most. It's a global campaign to saturate the world with the gospel of our Lord Jesus like never before.
The gospel is going to go into places that it never was before, into disciplines and areas that it never was before, and establish a higher way of life.
Make a global impact today with your sponsorship of Pastor Chris in 1 Billion Homes Project. For every home you sponsor, you send the gospel where it's never gone. You become the reason someone receives life, a second chance, and finds Jesus. Through the dynamic Pastor Chris in 1 Billion Homes Project, we've been able to expand our global mission, touching more souls, more regions, and producing a wave of powerful testimonies from people whose lives have been forever changed. Your financial support as a Loveworld USA partner is not just generous, it's supernatural power for global impact. Let's keep sending the gospel into every home through the Pastor Chris in 1 Billion Homes Project. Sign up today and sponsor any of the following categories.
It's time for you to give the right sacrifice, the right seed, because it's time for you to get the right harvest.
You can sponsor Pastor Chris in 1 Billion Homes Project by calling or going on our website now. Sign up to be Pastor Chris in 1 Billion Homes Project partner today. God bless you.
More news on Vice President J.D. Vance today. He stopped at a steel fabrication facility in La Crosse, Wisconsin today to promote the Republican domestic package that became law in July, part of a swing through battleground states ahead of the 2026 midterms. The tour comes as President Donald Trump urges Republicans to rebrand the sprawling legislation, telling aides he prefers working families' tax cut over the original One Big Beautiful Bill. J.D. Vance has echoed the shift, framing the law as a major tax cut for workers. The measure extends key 2017 tax provisions and eliminates taxes on tips and overtime pay, while also funding border security and codifying elements of the administration's immigration crackdown. Republicans are leaning on the message in ads that highlight relief for families, hourly workers, and seniors. Democrats counter that the law cuts safety net programs to finance tax breaks. The package restructures Medicaid and tightens food assistance rules. The Congressional Budget Office has estimated roughly 10 million people could lose health coverage, and the deficit could rise by $3.4 trillion. J.D. Vance has blasted those estimates and says the healthcare changes protect benefits for citizens. The sales push underscores the stakes for both parties in 2026, with the GOP defending slim House and Senate majorities amid redistricting fights and crime policy debates. Party committees on both sides are targeting vulnerable incumbents, while President Donald Trump has floated an unprecedented pre-midterm convention to showcase candidates and amplify the new Working Families branding. Watch this.
How nice is it to have a president who, instead of rewarding companies for shipping your jobs overseas, rewards companies for building factories right here in the United States of America? How nice is it to have a president of the United States who, instead of raising your taxes, is cutting your taxes by historic margins every single day, as we just did? For years, American leaders would ask you to work overtime, would ask you to spend even more time away from your family, and every hour that you spent at the job, they would reach further and further into your pocket. How nice is it to have a president of the United States who cut taxes on overtime, because we believe that if you spend an extra hour at work, the government ought to keep its hands the hell out of your pocket. Is that right? We know about 5%, about 1 in 20 Wisconsin workers rely on tips to bring home the bacon for themselves and their families. How nice is it to have a president of the United States and Republican majorities in Congress that cut taxes on tips instead of forcing our waitresses and service professionals to deal with the IRS. We ought to make it easier for folks to get by, which is exactly what we did when we cut taxes on tips, and Wisconsin families are going to be the beneficiaries.
And now on the business front, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang said he is in discussions with the Trump administration about selling the company's next-generation Blackwell AI chips to China, arguing that global adoption of U.S. technology would strengthen America's position in the AI race. Now, he described the talks as optimistic, but said no timeline has been set. Huang told Fox Business that President Donald Trump understands that having the world build AI on an American tech stack helps America win, adding that Washington wants U.S. standards to dominate abroad like the U.S. dollar is the global standard. Any potential sales would still need to navigate national security guardrails after the administration previously halted exports of NVIDIA's H20 data center chip to China. Now, the CEO of the tech giant also cast AI as an industrial revolution that will lift productivity and growth, even as it reshapes the labor market. Some jobs will go away. Many jobs will be new and invented, he said, suggesting efficiency gains could eventually enable a 4-day workweek. NVIDIA reported 0 H20 sales in China last quarter, with the CEO saying that the company is hoping for orders, calling the part a fantastic product on price performance. He reiterated that broader U.S. leadership comes from keeping global AI development on American hardware and software. The administration has signaled it wants American technology all over the world, but officials have also tightened export controls to prevent advanced chips from fueling adversaries' military AI. Now, any deal to supply Blackwell into China would test that balance between market reach and security. Let's take a look.
Long run, Joe. In the short run, they may not have a choice about procuring technology if it's made available, but certainly the Chinese government is working very hard to develop and buttress its own domestic industry because it doesn't want to have to rely on deals like this or potential promises in order to be able to access the chips that it needs to develop AI capabilities. I think that there is a lot of potential for sales, but ultimately that is a narrow window, and it's part of the reason why NVIDIA is so eager to get sales going as soon as possible.
In other news, Cracker Barrel has confirmed it has taken down the Pride section of its website and redirected it to a broader culture and belonging page. Part of a wider refresh, the company says added new content and removed outdated material. The chain also said it changed its business resource groups months ago. A spokesperson said the BRGs now channel sponsorships and events through the company's corporate giving priorities, addressing food insecurity, supporting community needs through food, and reducing food waste. Now, while the LGBTQ+ Alliance and other BRGs were previously listed online, those listings have since been removed. Cracker Barrel had sponsored the 2024 Nashville Pride Parade and also promoted rainbow rocking chairs during Pride Month. Now, the company, which has faced pressure from conservative activists over past LGBTQ initiatives, said it has not participated in the Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equality Index in several years, though a former leader of its LGBTQ group once served on HRC's Business Advisory Council. The update comes alongside a branding reversal after backlash to a new minimalist logo and restaurant redesigns. Cracker Barrel said it will keep its classic old-timer logo, adding that it listened to guests and remains focused on delicious food, warm welcomes, and country hospitality. Now, don't go anywhere. The news will continue after this break.
It's easy to set up, quick to start, and packed with value. Smarter streaming starts here with the Alpha TV Stick. Just plug and stream anytime, anywhere. Discover a curated lineup of content designed to inspire, live broadcasts and global events, inspirational films and series, children's programming, healing and teaching sessions, all on demand.
With millions of downloads worldwide, the Alpha TV app is transforming lives across the globe. And now, we're on a mission to reach 1 billion downloads of the Alpha TV app, and you can be part of it. Join the global wave with 1 billion Alpha TV app downloads worldwide. Bring the higher life into every home. Order your Alpha TV Stick today and experience smarter streaming. Alpha, the higher life is here.
Welcome back. Our sources tell us that Russia has launched its deadliest barrage on Kiev since July, killing at least 21 people, including 4 children, and wounding dozens, Ukrainian officials said. A 5-story apartment block in the Darnitsky district was destroyed, and blasts damaged the European Union's delegation office and neighboring British Council. EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen said 2 missiles detonated within 50 meters of the mission within 20 seconds. Ukraine's military called it the capital's biggest attack this month, saying nearly 600 drones and more than 30 ballistic and cruise missiles were used. Power outages spread after back-to-back strikes on energy infrastructure left over 100,000 homes without electricity on Wednesday, and tens of thousands more in the central regions today. Kiev also reported a naval crew member killed when a Ukrainian reconnaissance ship was struck. Condemnation was swift. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer accused Vladimir Putin of sabotaging hopes of peace, while EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas said Moscow had chosen escalation over diplomacy. Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz said the EU mission coming under fire showed Kremlin's brazenness. Brussels will summon Russia's charge d'affaires, as will London, and von der Leyen said a 19th EU sanctions package is in preparation. Now, despite the strikes, diplomatic tracks continue. Washington will meet a Ukrainian delegation in New York on Friday to discuss security guarantees, and von der Leyen will visit frontline EU states bordering Russia and Belarus in the coming days. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky urged new and tough sanctions, saying Moscow answered calls for ceasefire with ballistics instead of the negotiating table. Watch this.
The missile hit, and people were simply thrown by the impact. They were lying there. There was a woman, a wife, and their child. The woman was under a cement block. Her head was cut. It was split open. It was cut. She was under this block. We were not able to lift it. It was only lifted when the emergency services came. They used a lift. But she was not saved.
Ukraine's Air Force has said that it downed 563 of 598 drones and 26 of 31 Russian missiles. The military says 13 locations have been hit, with infrastructure at 26 different locations in rubble. Following the devastating strike, Kiev's mayor has urged for more international pressure on Russia.
More news on the international front. Mounting tensions over dwindling fish stocks have erupted into violence off Gambia's coast, where artisanal fishermen are targeting foreign industrial trawlers and increasingly fellow Gambians working aboard them. Video reviewed shows an arson attack last year on the Egyptian-owned Abu Islam that left Gambian crewman Kwazule with severe burns. highlighting how government rules requiring foreign vessels to hire local sailors have turned compatriots into combatants. Local crews accuse mainly Chinese and Egyptian-owned boats of cutting nets and encroaching inside the 9 nautical mile inshore zone reserved for small boats, especially at night. Fishermen in Gunjur say they've lost most of their gear and can't afford replacements in a country where per capita income is under $1,000. Now, while the Navy has occasionally detained trawlers for fishing in protected waters, using undersized mesh or lacking licenses, most vessels quickly return to sea. Fines are negotiable and repeat offenders face little lasting penalty, community advocates say. Now, one rare set of cases is moving through Gambian courts: the Abu Islam arson attack and a fatal 2024 collision involving the trawler Majulak 6 that killed 3 local fishermen. Families and conservation groups allege uneven enforcement, swift action when industrial boats are hit, slow progress when artisanal crews are the victims. Authorities did not respond to requests for comment. The stakes extend beyond law and order. Conservation groups warn that key species, including sardinella, bonga, grouper, and cuttlefish, are overexploited and threaten a pillar of Gambia's food security. Now, as prices rise and catches fall, some fishermen are selling their boats to human smuggling networks or attempting the perilous Atlantic route to Europe themselves. Lay, who is still recovering from his burns, says he may have no choice. "I just want to work so my family can survive," he says. Let's take a look.
Gambia reopened its waters in 2017 to industrial fishing after a 2015 ban. Overfishing has increased tensions between local fishermen and commercial fishing vessels. Conflicts have intensified and become more violent. This video, obtained by the Associated Press, shows a small boat being chased by a trawler. A few seconds later, someone throws stones at the fishermen. There's no government database that tracks these incidents, but the AP reviewed more than 20 videos showing confrontations between small fishing boats and commercial vessels since 2023.
Just before we end the news, a quick look at tomorrow's weather forecast. And to end the news today, a quick recap of the top headlines. Vice President J.D. Vance defends prayer, challenges Psaki after Minneapolis church shooting. The classified records detail Obama-era briefings on early Trump-Russia probe. Ex-president denies leading role. And President Trump proposes pre-midterm GOP convention as RNC weighs options for 2026. Alligator Alcatraz starts emptying after court order. White House vows to fight ruling. And European leaders outraged as Russian strikes killed 21 in Kiev, damaging EU mission. And that's all the news we have for you today. Join us at the same time tomorrow for more news. I'm Joel Richards, signing off. Good night, Jesus loves you, and God bless the United States of America.